You've probably watched it happen. A pony goes quiet after being left alone too long, and the first thing people say is that they're being needy, dramatic, looking for attention. The reading feels obvious, almost automatic. Someone gets restless when they're ignored, so the problem must be that they want more of you. More time, more focus, more fuss. It's such a common explanation that almost nobody stops to question it. It gets repeated, accepted, treated as common sense. But sit with that quiet behavior for a moment, and something starts to feel off about the easy answer. Because the pony usually isn't asking for more. They're asking for something much smaller, much harder to see, and almost always missed. The shift happens here. A pony rarely needs constant attention. What they're actually listening for is a signal, a small, reliable confirmation that they're still being received, that their presence still registers, that their affection is still landing somewhere in someone who notices. Attention and acknowledgment look similar from the outside, but they aren't the same thing at all. Attention is loud. It takes up space, fills the room, demands a moment of focus. Acknowledgment is quieter, a glance across the room, a word in passing, a hand resting briefly on their head before you move on with whatever you were doing. The pony almost never needs the loud version. They need the quiet one, the small one, to keep arriving on a steady, predictable rhythm. That rhythm is what tells them the connection is still alive underneath everything else going on, even when nothing visible is being said between you. And when that rhythm goes missing for too long, something starts to change, slowly, beneath the surface, in a way that's easy to miss completely until it's already happened. In the first stretch of silence, the pony assumes the most generous explanation. You're busy. You're focused on something else. You'll come back around when you can. Patience is easy here because the bond still feels solid in the background. Nothing about the silence threatens it yet. But as the quiet continues, the edges of that patience start to soften without warning. Small doubts begin to appear, not all at once, but in little flickers spread across the day. Did my last gesture land? Was something different about the way you looked at me earlier? Am I still on your mind the way I was yesterday or the day before that? These questions don't come with words attached. They come as a faint tightness, a small hesitation before reaching out again. And if the silence keeps stretching, eventually one of those doubts finds a sentence for itself. Something quieter and heavier than the others. Maybe they don't care the same way anymore. That sentence is the threshold. Before it, the bond felt automatic, something that didn't have to be checked or maintained. After it, the bond starts to feel uncertain, something that has to be earned back or tested or watched carefully. The important part is this. The pony almost never knows this drift is happening to them. They don't sit down and decide to feel insecure. The shift moves underneath language, never quite reaching the place where it could be named or spoken out loud. It only shows up later in a change of posture, a change of tone, a small reluctance in how willingly they reach for you the next time around, or even the time after that. Here's what almost nobody sees clearly. When a pony goes quiet or pulls back, or starts acting distant, it looks like sulking from the outside. It looks like punishment or moodiness or a small protest meant to make you feel something. But underneath, it's almost never any of those things. What's actually happening is much smaller, much quieter, and much more vulnerable than it appears. The pony is trying to regain a sense of footing after feeling emotionally invisible for too long. Their nervous system isn't asking how to get more attention. It's asking whether the bond is still safe to lean on, and pulling back becomes a way of checking, a quiet experiment. If I step away, will you notice? If I soften my reach, will you reach instead? If I disappear for a moment, will you come looking for me? This isn't strategy. It isn't calculated. There's no plan behind it, no manipulation, no game being played underneath. It's the quiet logic of someone trying to verify the ground beneath them without making a scene about it, without forcing a conversation they don't yet know how to have. Words feel too risky here because words would expose how much the silence has already affected them. So the test happens in behavior instead, in distance, in stillness, in small withdrawals. They're not trying to punish you. They're not trying to teach you a lesson. They're checking the wiring of something they depend on in the only way that still feels survivable to them. And the saddest part is that most of the time, the person on the other end never even realizes a quiet test was happening at all. What people miss most about prolonged ignoring is that the damage doesn't arrive as a single break. There's no dramatic moment, no clear point where something snaps in two. The damage is slower than that and much quieter. Each unanswered signal teaches the pony, gently, almost invisibly, that reaching out carries a small risk of being unmet. Not every time, just often enough to start registering somewhere in the background. Over weeks or months, they begin to reach a little less. Their expressions soften. The brightness in how they greet you fades by a degree you might not even notice until you compare it to how they used to be. The eagerness loses some of its edge. The small offerings, the touches, the looks, the unspoken bids for closeness start arriving in smaller doses, then more cautiously, then sometimes not at all. They stop testing eventually, not because the need went away, but because the cost of being unmet became too high to keep absorbing again and again. And here's the part that catches most people off guard. Big reconnection gestures, after long stretches of absence, often feel strangely hollow when they finally arrive. The grand return, the intense moment, the lavish attention meant to make up for the silence. It lands on someone who has already started quietly protecting themselves from being hurt the same way again. The repair arrives long after the lesson itself has already been learned. Ignoring a pony rarely teaches them patience. It teaches them slowly to expect less, to reach less, to soften the shape of what they hope for in return. What actually keeps the bond steady is not intensity, not grand reconnection, not making up for absences with something larger or louder. It's the small, regular acknowledgment, the glance, the word, the brief touch that says without saying it, I still see you. Your signals still reach me. You are not invisible here. That's the whole architecture of the bond in its simplest form. A pony doesn't need to be entertained. They don't need to be held more tightly or rewarded or impressed or won back through grand gestures. They need the quiet, steady proof that their presence is still landing somewhere on the other side. Everything else built on top of that is decoration. And if any of this has felt familiar while watching, it might be worth asking quietly which small acknowledgments you may have stopped giving without noticing, which small returns you've stopped offering, and what that ongoing silence, however unintended, has already been teaching the person on the other end of it about where they stand with you.